last job before I retired was I was a night maintenance man at the El Dorado Country Club. I went to work at about 3:30 in the evening, and I replaced the day crew, which consisted of a foreman, an assistant foreman, and 6 wetbacks. And when they left, I was responsible for everything in maintenance in the whole darn club. If I couldn't do it myself, I had to know who to call to come in and do it, like refrigeration or electricity or whatever. Anything I couldn't do that had to be done, I had to know who to call and be able to make the decision, because if I made the wrong decision, my boss, the foreman, would get on to me. But anyway, I liked the job because I was kind of like my own boss, as long as I didn't screw up. If I did it before somebody thought about asking me for it, I never had to be asked. One night, Ronald Reagan was a guest of the club, and at that time, he was in between jobs, I guess, so he wasn't really a big shot, but they gave him a cottage, and him and his wife, Nancy, called me, and they were upset because they couldn't turn the dial on the television set, and he wanted to be sure that when he got back from the speech he was making, he'd be able to see it on the news, and he wanted the television to be working. So I fixed it up so he could get it on the station, the local station that would have the news, and I says, now, that's the best I can do for you, unless I drag out an old TV that might not work at all when you get around to it, and by that time at night, I might not even be here. So Mr. Reagan decided that it was best to settle for the way I'd fixed it up, and so he went out that night and made a speech and got to watch it on the news that night when he came back. So I got to meet who would become President Reagan and his wife Nancy that night. Oh, and then one night, my all favorite actress and singer, Alice Faye, came to the club with her husband. God, I can't remember his name. He's a celebrity too, in the old radio days. And they were at a big party there, and after the party broke up, somebody went over to the piano, the orchestra was gone, and Alice Faye started to sing. And boy, that was the end of my work for the night. I got up as close as I could and listened to Alice Faye singing all these great old songs. Boy, what a treat that was. I wish I had your camera there then. And anyway, it was you probably don't even remember Alice Faye, I guess.
Not really.
And then that other girl, the one I can't think of her name is, the Wheel of Fortune, she sang. You can't remember her? Mary something? Anyway, she was singing for a special party in the little off room. We have a bar in the off room for these special kind of parties, and there was she had her own orchestra up there, and a special platform that is made just for that place. But the platform was about 2 feet high or so, and there was one step going up there. Well, this singer, don't you remember Wheel of Fortune?
No, I don't. The song Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah, the song Wheel of Fortune. Real.
Okay, I remember that.
Anyway, here she comes out, and she's dressed in one of these sleeve dresses that go right down to the legs, and she can't walk, let alone step on that step, and she can't get up there. So I was going to buy cedar, these guys, when they got to hook up their instruments and all that, I got to always go up there and get extension cords and everything and get them all set up right. So she can't get up there. So I says, I'll fix it. So I ran down to the carpenter shop and I built her a pair of stairs with little short steps so she could step on up there. Well, they're only about 6 inches a piece, so she could make the steps up there. So I brought it back up and set it up there, and then I stood by and held her while she got up onto her stage, and I says, I'll be right over here when you're ready to go down, doing your... So I quit work that night again too. And she says, what do you want me to sing you? I sang Wheel of Fortune. I said, I know you're going to sing it anyway, but I just love that song. So I went over and hid, because I always got to, you see that guy on TV, the Tool Time, you ever see that?
Yeah.
Well, that was me. I got this whole sack, they're around here someplace, whole sack of tools on me all the time. I can do anything. So I got to get out of sight, and she does her singing, and went K-Star. K-Star. Remember K-Star? K-Star. So K-Star's who I'm talking about. So when she finished the first set, well, I was right there, and I was her rail so she could go down again. And I waited until she went up. So I stayed with her until she finished her whole set that night. I had all my work piled up, but I took care of her, and she sang The Wheel of Fortune just for me.
Wow.
I told you about. Didn't I write a story about Frank Sinatra coming in the saloon I worked?
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell that story?
Sure.
Well, this little saloon was about 8 miles outside of Palm Springs in the sand dunes. In fact, they call it the dunes out there. It was a housing development that almost got lost in the sand dunes. Anyway, this little bar was there, and I was working at it, and it was pretty late at night, and the bar was about half full. We had a piano player, a piano bar. Well, not exactly a bar, but a guy was playing a piano there. And all of a sudden the doors fly open, and in comes these, what we call the beautiful people. Us working people in Palm Springs call these beautiful people, people that wear ties and coats and hats, and ladies wear hats and all this. Anyway, they're beautiful people. And indeed, these were beautiful people. There was Frank Sinatra and Yul Brynner and two guys who were also in the whole bit, the tuxes and everything, which I suspect were business agents, that kind of guys. I didn't recognize them as celebrities. And two beautiful women. And they were all dressed in the nails. I mean, they were beautiful people. So all the guys in the bar, boy, their eyes bugged up. The piano player bugs up. When he saw Frank Sinatra, he almost went out of his whacker. Started playing Sinatra songs. In fact, he almost had Sinatra. He was humming. He never got around to really singing. But anyway, the reason it stopped in the bar, because he had to go real fast. Well, when this bar was built, it was in a section of buildings, and they were just stores, one store after the other. And the guy that had set this up bought this corner lot, and there was only one set of restrooms, and they were around the corner. There was a men's room and a ladies' room, but you had to go outside the bar and around the corner to find them. And so anyway, Sinatra throws us a pile of money onto the bar, and he says, set us up drinks here, bartender, and I'll have a straight shot, water chaser. I forget what it was. I think it was a bourbon. I think sour mash bourbon he was drinking, and I think the girls had martinis and I forget what the others had, but Yul Brynner and Sinatra had the same a good bourbon with water chasers. So I started fixing a drink, and Sinatra tears out the back. Before I have a chance to see anything, he's out the back door. Well, out in the back door, there's a hitching rack for horses, because on Sundays there was a stables about 5 miles away from the bar, and they used to rent horses and have guiding tours, and they'd bring them out, and the outpost was just far enough away to make a good ride. And so the boss put up a hitching rack for them, so these guys that come in, tie the horses up, come in and have drinks and stuff in the bar. That's why the hitching rack was out there. So Sinatra tears out the bar, and he was gone, so I went ahead and mixed the drinks. When he comes back in, he's laughing like heck. So he's telling Yul Brynner, he says, this place has got no head. He said, I had to piss on a hitching rack. And Yul Brynner says, well, Jesus, I got to go too. So he tears out there. And then Sinatra's telling me the rest of them how he didn't have a restroom out here. He had to piss on a hitching rack. So I had to tell Sinatra that it was around the corner. I says, you'd have to go around the corner to find it. I says, I'm sorry, I wasn't fast enough to tell you. So anyway, it's a big joke, and then Yul Brynner come in, and he was laughing like heck. So here, I had these two big celebrities pissing on the hitching rack, which everybody in the bar knew about it now. So nobody in that bar ever went all the way around to the hitching rack. I mean, all the way around to the men's room anymore. They all went to the hitching rack. That was standard for the rest of the, I guess, forever. And anyway, then Sinatra looked around the place, and we had a big menu on the side of the board, and he asked me about that, and I explained it to him. And the reason he was there was they had a big banquet that night. It was a fireman thing, you know, firemen raise money every year, and Frank Sinatra was the head personality for him that night. In other words, he went down there and performed free, and I guess Yul Brynner did too. And they were on their way back to Sinatra's place, which the shortcut was coming down Palm Canyons by their place, and they only stopped in the saloon because he wanted to go, and that's why he was there. So anyway, he stuck around and had a couple more. He asked me to have a drink with him. So it ended up I had 2 drinks with Sinatra and Yul Brynner that night. And when he left me, I don't know, it was around $20–25 tip when they finally left out of there. And anyway, they baptized our hitching post, and it's been a sacred shrine ever since that day.
What about time you had to get Frank Sinatra into his house? He got locked out because he was too drunk.
Oh, that was I was on. That was before I came on this job here. I was on a private patrolman, and I went by Frank Sinatra's house every day, and he just installed some fancy new gates on there that you open with a little gadget like you got in your hand there. It's supposed to open these gates. So I come by there, and Frank is parked right out in front of the place, and he can't get this damn gate open. So I stopped and went over to see what was wrong. He says, dirty word, I can't get this lousy dirty word gate open. So I says, can I see the gadget, Mr. Sinatra? So he hands it to me, and I hit the right button, and flew all open. So he got into his gate, and he thanked me a whole lot. That's all there was of that. But I just helped him that night. And of course, he didn't remember me from that night when I was a saloon keeper. Well, I was driving this taxi cab and I got a grocery order. Well, cab drivers hate grocery orders because you got to park the cab, go into the store, pick up the order, bring it back out to the cab, and take it to the house, and usually it's a maid or the cook that receives it, and they usually, if there's a tip there, they usually steal it, or the tab's on a charge account. So we just hate those grocery orders. So anyway, the order goes to, here's another name, I can't remember these names. Anyway, this guy had been a cop at one time, but now he was an Irish singer. In fact, he retired as an Irish singer, but he was one of the big Democrats in Palm Springs, which is, more Republican kind of thing. His name was an old Brian or something like that. I just can't fix it. Anyway, I went to his house, and there's cars parked all over the place, and I had a hard time getting close enough into the driveway. And I had to take up my groceries, and I had to walk past the swimming pool, and down by the swimming pool, there was a table set up under the umbrellas and all that, and there was a big bunch of people, all men, some of them in uniforms, medals, and the whole bits. And in the center of this whole bunch looked like Harry Truman. My president, Harry Truman. And so it'd been funny, but when I was in the union, in the bartenders union, as an official, one of the things that I was working for was Harry Truman's election. So I took the groceries into the kitchen, and the cook took them from me. And I asked her, I says, "That looks like Harry Truman out there." She says, "It is. That's why I got to get all this stuff. I got to feed all these guys. He's just going to be here flew in here, and they're saying hello to Mr. Truman. That's why I had to get all this stuff." So now, when I walk outside, I got my yellow cab hat on. So now I walk as close to the pool as I can around there. I'm taking a big detour, but I'm getting as close as I can to see Harry. So he looks up from these guys, and he sees me, and I give him a military salute like that. And he gets in that big Harry Truman grin, and he comes walking right towards me, and he's got his hand out. I shake hands with Harry Truman, and I says, "Mr. Truman, when you were president, I was driving my own car, not a taxi cab." And he laughed. He thought that was so funny. So he turned around, went back, and I went out to my cab, and I could see him telling to these other guys in what the cab driver told him, that he used to have his own car to drive instead of a taxi cab. So anyway, that was meeting Harry Truman. When I'm working up on a tram, of course, we got celebrities quite often. And Max Schmeling was up there, I remember one time. He was just as sourpuss in person as he was in the ring. And then one day, Gene Toonie came up there. Well, I guess I have to tell this part of the story. Years ago, when I was a little kid, Gene Toonie was fighting Jack Dempsey, and they had two fights, and Gene Toonie won both times. Well, to me, Jack Dempsey was like my real hero, and so I always bet on every penny I could get. I bet on Jack Dempsey, and so I lost it fair and square in a fair fight, I think. But the second fight, there was what they call the long count, and I always thought that was wrong, and that Gene Toonie shouldn't have won that fight because of the long count, and I wouldn't pay off the debt, and I had to fight every guy that I owed 2 or 3 cents to. So I remembered that for a long time. Well, all of a sudden, here's this Gene Toonie standing in my bar. This is up on the tram of the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway. So I says, "Mr. Toonie," and big smile and grin, and he came over and he had a beer. We had big glasses of Michelob beer, I think it was. And So he started asking me questions about the tram, and I started talking to him. And then I told him, I says, you know, Mr. Toonie, I got to make a confession to you. And so I told him the story about how I bet on Jack Tempsey because he was my hero, and I wouldn't pay off the debt on account of the long count. And he laughed like heck because he thought that was a funny story, because he heard that story a lot of times about the long count, but he never heard of a little kid fighting over the call on it. So anyway, we talked in fact I got a picture of Gene Toonie someplace, and the cook came out, and I introduced the cook to Gene Toonie. Got a picture of both of them someplace, and so Gene got to talking about his son, who was running in politics, and he was running being senator or something in California. He was a carpetbagger is what he was. But I told Gene Tunney, I says, well, he's your son, I'll vote for him, you can bet on that. And so later one day, I'm driving a cab now, who to pick up but take Gene Tunney's son to the airport, who is now the senator or whatever it was he ran for. So I told him the stories. So he got a kick out of hearing the story that I told his dad. And I think he was a senator. But that's my Gene Tunney story, if anybody remembers Gene Tunney.